Right, well, first of all, thank you for coming. I'll confirm for the record that I don't know what questions you're going to ask me. I have a fair idea from the social media. I'll also like to put on record that although, shall I say, we've had a lot of abuse, the administrators, I've got thick shoulders, it doesn't bother me. The bulk of the fans are good, solid fans and have told the others to shut up. But it would help if you could get the message up that every time these false stories appear, you are making bidders reconsider aspects of possibly lowering the bid because of hostility. And that's not clever. No. Wait till they own the club, then attack them. Okay, is there a spokesman for you, or are you just going to put your hand up and we'll take you one at a time? Right?
Yeah, just first one on future player sales. So you said that the previous player sales are in essence clearing the football creditors, which is obviously essential. Given that the fact we still have 2 or 3 very sellable assets, if those sales were made, would we be looking at more sort of, would we be in a better bargaining position in terms of getting maybe a greater value for those players? And secondly, could that potentially reduce the cost of the club?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's one player that's got money owed him that may go through, that's not somebody that's trained with the club for a while. There's another player which an approach from a Premier League club on. Beyond that, it's only people making sensible offers. I mean, there are part of the complication here is that some of these players are internationals. They've played, they've played in World Cups. They are, this is their livelihood, and they've had their wages halved because the club got relegated, and the relegation wasn't their fault. With the best will in the world, the manager, the players got themselves to mid-table on a budget which is a lot lower than most of the clubs in the Championship. And those players have done nothing wrong. The circumstances have dictated that the club got relegated. They've all had their wages halved, and clearly, especially some of the older players, are not comfortable playing in League One when they feel they should be playing in the top half of the Championship. Especially those that are internationals. So there's an added dynamic there that there are players who will feel that they ought to be playing at a higher level, and I understand that. But if we're not getting proper offers for them, for example, Dave Marshall went to Derby on a free. He was expensive. He's 35, and he's international. And we've already got 2 other goalkeepers. So we discussed it with management and decided that we would allow Dave in his circumstances to go. Most of the other players don't fit that criterion.
Just while we're on player sales, because you mentioned the sales before, has Josh Windass been sold as yet?
Has he been sold yet? He has not been sold, but he's in the process of being sold. But there's a debt due outstanding on him to Rangers for £500,000, which if I sell him for £1, I have to give Rangers £500,000. So there's a complication there that says, there's a club wants him. I think the player himself would rather be playing at the club where he's been on loan. But what I can't do is trigger that £500,000 because we've got better uses for £500,000 than playing a club on a debt where we're not getting anything for the money. Yeah.
Yes.
In terms of the players sold, how have you reached your valuation of them? So what has been an acceptable fee for them? Is it just a case of if there's
we
things...
have an agent working for us.
Right, okay, so it's not a case of if there's a fee outstanding for football creditors, it's not meet that and then sell, or...?
No, it's a fairly difficult world we're living in at the minute because all the lower league teams have got no income. Most of the Championship teams have got no income. The ones with very wealthy owners, the ones which have just been promoted, and the clubs in the Premier League have got wealthy owners, have got money. And if you look at where our players have gone, they've pretty much all gone to clubs that have just been promoted or clubs which have got very, very wealthy owners. In terms of setting the prices, it's more about what offers. Yeah, it's more the other way around. You get offers, and sometimes, and we've turned down. I've probably turned down twice as many offers as we've accepted. You know, some of the offers have been frankly insulting, to be quite honest. And you know, you can't blame people for trying, I suppose. But you know, we're not in the game of just giving players away. It's difficult. If you look on Sky Sports at the minute, you'll see that the players being talked about are sort of the Lionel Messi end of the spectrum. And box standard championship players moving around between clubs isn't really happening, because if you've got no players coming in and no season tickets being sold, so you've got no income coming in, no season tickets being sold, all the clubs are really just trying to survive. So most of them, and particularly now in League 1 and League 2 where you've got salary caps, all clubs are having to look to release players, which means that there are quite a lot of players out there who are good players who would expect to earn more than you will on a salary cap. But there's a lot of them, and that gives teams a chance to pick people up on a free. And therefore, if you get the chance of picking up somebody on a free of a similar standard to somebody you've got to pay for, I think you see a lot of players moving around for free at the minute.
So would you say it's more to do with the financial impact of coronavirus now that we're seeing players, well, in our opinion, go for less than we think they're worth? Or do you think it's more the administration situation that's caused it, or a mix of both?
I think there's three things. I think there's obviously administration. You wouldn't, in a normal world, you wouldn't be selling players because you have to sell them. You know, so if you have to sell them because you can't pay the wages and there's no squad, if you don't sell a player, you're not in a great bargaining position. If you're ongoing, you might have 3 players and you might be willing to let one go, and nobody knows which the one is that's going to go. But a higher up club comes in. You know, for example, Anthony Robinson. I had an offer from a Premier League club at £3 million for him, but that got, as soon as the club was relegated, there was a release clause, and although that release clause was confidential, it gets out because that's the world we live in. So they instantly reduced their bid to 10,000 more than the release clause, with exactly the same dates. I was told by one of the representatives that the chairman of that club was a clairvoyant. He managed to work out every date, every appearance, every percentage, every date that the monies were due, and the buyout clause as a guess. You know, we all know that isn't real. We all know what's really happened. But the bottom line is the player had the ability to go, and legally we had to sell at that price. If we'd have been in the championship, there was no release clause. I believe Anthony would have gone between 3 and 6, which is probably more the value that fans would expect.
Yeah, you have to also bear in mind we're not just dealing with the clubs, we're dealing with agents. And agents come in all shapes and sizes. I'm not going to name names. Some have been very helpful, and some have been verging on blackmail. And let's leave it there. Yes.
Yeah, I've got a question on the stadium, and whether the council have tried to increase their stake in the stadium to help protect the club.
No, because they didn't know it was going into administration. Once it's in administration, their stake and the shareholders are just frozen out. Okay.
I can say I've spoken to senior members of the council, and obviously they're looking at their options. And there might be an option there with the council coming in and helping out. They've been very, very positive. I think Alison, who's in charge of the council, has been really, really sensible. I've had some very, very positive conversations with her. And I know that she's talking to lots of people to see if there's any way the council can step in and help.
Question here.
Linking back to departures, with coach Anthony Barry joining Chelsea, will Chelsea be paying any compensation for that?
The role, as I understand it, I was approached by by Mark Polliott at Tranmere at the start of the case to ask whether we'd be willing to let Anthony leave, and I told him no unless there was compensation paid. Anthony respected that decision. He's been absolutely first class throughout this, as of all the players, but he's been somebody that's been really, really positive. You know, he's a fantastic coach. And him, Paul Cook, and Liam Richardson at the end of last season, you saw you didn't have to get a tune out of the players at the end of the season. The results were absolutely fantastic, including a record win. Anthony has done training courses with people at Chelsea. I think probably Frank Lampard, who is a top quality coach, a top quality player. I think that Chelsea made the position available because they felt that Anthony would be a good addition. I don't think if we'd have asked for a fee, they would have given him the role. And I felt that at a human level, at a personal level, we weren't going to get anything from him anyway. And the guy is top class. He's, as an example, he made mind me saying this, but I'll say it anyway. He rang me and said he would forego all his wages that he was owed. This is after I'd agreed that he could go to Chelsea. He said he would. He was so grateful to be given the chance to work because, with the new owner, he may not have been there. It's a fantastic opportunity for him to go and coach in the Champions League. And I didn't feel that if that was me or one of my kids, I didn't feel that I could stop him from going. The compensation wasn't a lot. We're not talking. It's a couple of tens of thousands. It's not in the grand scale of things a lot of money. I didn't feel I could stand in his way. I equally didn't take him up on his offer to waive his wages because that's just not right. But he's been absolutely first class through this, and I've really got to say that he deserves a chance. He's a top class coach. I've talked around your question. I did speak to Chelsea. I did mention solidarity. I did mention class. I perhaps said things that I shouldn't have said, but ultimately they said no, and we just decided to respect that.
In further player sales, Paul Cook alluded to on TalkSport that a deal was agreed to sell Keith and Moore 2 days before the Fulham game. Can you comment on that?
Yeah, the transfer window wasn't open until after the season, was it? I don't think. Keith Moore's agent had offers from around 5 clubs. He was probably at the time the most saleable asset, and we had offers in from, I think there must have been 5 clubs in for him, at least 5. We had to pay the wages, we had no income, we had to make a decision. We had a conversation with the manager about it. The player was fully aware that people were making offers, as was his agent, because I think it was largely his agent which would have been getting those offers in. The decision to sell some players was already taken. I think Paul's issue wasn't so much that there's a decision taken to sell players. I think it was more about that he realised that going forward, the decision to sell players wouldn't be lie with the manager because the point of building a team up, the manager wants to bring players in, he wants to decide who leaves. We weren't in a position where we could do that, and we had conversations with Paul over that. I think he said on TalkSport that probably was the moment he decided he was going to leave. I've got to say his attitude was first class. I've said all the way through that when I've met him, he's lit the room up. His enthusiasm, he really gets people bought in, and as a manager, he did a fantastic job at this club, in particular post-Christmas. When he came to see me after the relegation, there was really a mood of sadness is probably the best way to describe it. I think him and the players have given everything in those final few weeks. I think he felt absolutely just gutted about the whole thing, and he decided that given his cost, given the fact that the club probably wouldn't have been able to pay his wages in League One, he took a brave personal decision, one which massively benefited the club, and he decided to hand his resignation. He was in no way pushed, and there was no disagreement. There's been no disagreement with him. I still talk with him now. He's been really a top class guy, and I think his actions were at a time disappointment, but the actions really were something which has helped the club no end because the level of wages, etc., we're across the club as a whole far too high. So I've got nothing but good things to say about Paul and any of his team, to be honest.
So with that in mind, is Liam Richardson is he effectively the manager at the moment?
Well, he's got 100% win record at the minute, hasn't he? After the game against Bolton. But yeah, at the minute Liam's taking the first team. He's been helped out by Gregor Rioch from the academy, because we've got a few under 23s training with the first team, and that at the minute he's just about stabilising the ship.
So looking forward to like a week of Saturday we kick off against Fleetwood. Are we likely to see some of the out of contract players being signed up before then? You know, we players like registered as trialists.
Yeah. I mean, it's not really our decision on that. It's down to what the EFL rules are. So there's some of those lads have played particularly well and trained very well, and they're great to have around the place. Ideally, it would be a new owner's decision, I want to think.
Right. So I mean, time distance is short, isn't it? We're looking at a week here. Are the EFL working with the club? Working with yourselves, looking at ways of getting a team together to play that first game?
They're waiting at the moment for who's buying the club.
Right, so that it's all
And
into
unfortunately, the person we're dealing with has been on holiday for 2 weeks.
So
We are going back to the EFL today about the new season. As I said, that we will see what they raise, what problems. There's a long way to go with the EFL because the new owner's got to put that £5 million bond up. It could be more than £5 million. But we will mention about the team, the point you've raised, and see if we can get anywhere.
yeah, because the worry from me is looking back to last season. We're in just the first fixture, and we know what that led to, and that's where I'm.
Why are you worried about us missing the fixture?
Well, if there's no team to put out.
There'll be a team.
There's enough players. It's just that some of the younger players will have to step up. You know, we've got players. It's the difference between having an international or an under 23 player, which is not ideal. But yeah, we've definitely got players to put out.
So it's more a Bolton than a Bury then, in that sense.
Yeah.
This is not a Bury or anywhere near a Bury at this moment. I have to add that because if all the buys disappear, you heard what I said earlier.
Yeah.
Will our academy set up and suffer in all this, or will they?
No final decision has been made. We've talked to various bidders. Whoever signs the contract will make the decision.
In the short term, we've signed up with the EFL as funding for the academy. So there is money being released to us to help fund the academy over the next 2 months. We've signed up to do that. So we haven't made a decision to do anything, but ultimately it'll be a purchase and not us. But the EFL is working with us at the minute to keep the academy going.
You spoke about the bidders, and there's 2 groups of Americans and 2 UK bidders.
That's in the front row.
Front row, yeah.
I've got an outer circle, believe it or not.
That's good to hear. But how close? Is there anyone close at all, or are we still looking weeks down the line?
What they've been doing, we have established what's known as a data room at our lawyers online, and they get permission to go in, and every document, and I'm talking about maybe thousands of pages, are in there. They've all been going in, doing their due diligence, using it as an excuse to move the bid, but the 2 of them, maybe 3 of them, are at a stage where they've had the contract that they'd sign it. They then move to contract. That will be a very quick process. The work is being done up to saying, right, that's our final bid, can you make it work? As soon as we get that, we move to contract. They have been told the first person to sign a contract who can prove to my satisfaction that the EFL will get it. There'll be no waiting for somebody because they've got more money. We can't afford to do that.
Do you feel that's close with at least one of those
It's not
parties?
going to happen before bank holiday.
Do you feel it's close with at least one party?
No, I think I've got 2 parties at the same point, really. It's always the same. It's like EU negotiations. About 1 minute to 12, somebody winks and it all happens.
Okay.
And there's no good trying to speed it up because you just put them off.
Yeah.
Just on the, obviously, you've already said the key aspect of it is that they have that sort of 5 million basically proof of funds. When you talked about a bond, are you talking about a bond that basically, a bond that will be held by the Football League, or just proof
Yeah,
that you've
I
got
think
5 million in the bank? Because
I
that
think
would-
it varies at what happens, but my understanding would be that somebody dumps 5 million in a special bank account, which feeds into the club each month the shortfall over 2 years. And they want to see this account, they want to know. You know, the EFL, let's be honest, has received a lot of criticism regarding approval of the change of ownership from Troy. They're not going to be caught out again by somebody who can come in, sell off stuff, take it out as a profit and walk away again. That's not what they want. They can't afford to have that happen. So I think they're going to be, whoever it is going to have to demonstrate medium to long-term commitment to this club.
And you think it will be held separately from them? Because that's been one of the...
It won't be in the club. It won't be 5 million dumped in the club.
Because that's been one of the issues, hasn't it? That's one of the things that's been pushed for in governance is with the
Well,
owners and directors test.
I think
it's tightened
if
up.
you want to have a discussion about how the EFL should change its rules, when I did Bournemouth 10 years ago, I suggested that all new owners should put up an insurance bond with the EFL that pays money when situations like this occur, and it's never been picked up.
But that's clearly better for us if they have to. So you can't get somebody in with an ulterior motive if it's being held by the league.
And it'd be better that it's a UK owner, because Wigan, no doubt, have suffered by having foreign ownership beyond the control of anybody in this country.
Just to add to my last point about the bidders and where we're up to, are they all aware of what's gone on with Exton, and are they
Yeah,
happy with
everybody
that?
knows. That caused a few revisions to bids, some bidders to disappear because it was obvious that they were going to flip it. All they were going to do is value it at X for the purposes of the bid and flip it for another $500,000.
Right, okay.
Well, I don't want to be involved with that. We needed the money, so we made that decision. Originally, all the bidders wanted it. All those bidders have disappeared. Somebody's come back with a fourth bid and a different syndicate. So you get a bit sceptical, don't you, when they come back on a fourth time. But we listen to them because we're just dealing with everybody at the moment, with no favourites. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
When it comes to Exton, it's been reported that the figure's around £1 million for the sale. Can you confirm that? And
I will tell you categorically that I'm not going to tell you the figure, but it ain't £1 million, and it ain't anything like £1 million, and it's just another bag of, I was going to say crap, but ladies present at the back. It's another load of lies that people are putting up, making up stories, worrying the fans, and what's happening is we get bombarded, as you can imagine, with tweets. Well, I'm not on Twitter, but on social media, and instead of concentrating on the club, because I make it my business to try and answer everybody, even if it's no comment. So I think it'd be useful where people, and especially anonymous, that anonymous letter nearly put a bidder off completely. Now, if that's a Wigan fan, I'll eat my hat. I think it's one of the buyers we kicked out, to be honest. But people believe it. Why do people... I'm from a different generation. Why do you believe an anonymous person on social media? Ask what's their motive? Yes.
In terms of this bond for the EFL, if we're close to getting a buyer, but nobody's committed to put this bond in when we play Ipswich on the 13th, are we categorically said by the EFL, you're not playing that fixture until we get the
Don't
bond?
know till I go and ask if we've permission to run it.
Fair enough.
And that'll be, you put that out there once you've obviously spoken to them. Will you let us as fans know that we have got
I
permission
think what
if
you've
we
got
gain
to
it?
face, and I understand, listen, I'm a fan, I'm a Leeds fan, I have been for 60 years. I'll always look where Wigan's results are, where Bournemouth's results, but I'm a Leeds fan and I understand the emotion of it all and the heartbreak when you think you're going to lose your club. But what you can't expect is every time somebody asks a question, you're going to get an answer. Because we're not in that business, we're in the business of saving the club. So the easiest thing will be for the supporters club or the supporter, the various, get together, get one person, let him have a session a week, if it's on the phone with me, going through questions like this, but I'm not answering on an hourly and daily basis, especially at midnight.
And some of the stuff is contractual, so if you've got a settlement, whether it's a settlement with a director, a settlement with a player, a settlement with a manager, there's always confidentiality clauses in these agreements. There's agreed press releases that go out. So Gerald read an agreed press statement before. There've been agreed, often fairly sterile things that are agreed between the parties, and there are agreements that say we're not allowed to go discussing outside. In particular, when you do player sales, it's agreed that the club that's buying the player wants to release the good news that they've just bought a player. So it would be entirely wrong, and that's in the contract. It would be entirely wrong with me then when I see rumours on Twitter and I get contacted to say, is it true that Jamal Lowe's going to Swansea or Preston or wherever the rumours were? If I comment on it, I'm then breaching the contract because actually, I'm hoping that Swansea did announce it at 10 o'clock this morning because they were supposed to. Otherwise, I've probably breached an agreement. But it's not about being secretive. It's not about anything other than sometimes you sign a contract that says you can't. Sometimes there's stuff going out in social media which is either right or half right, and if it's half right, it might be completely wrong. But if it's half right, for example, there's stuff about Jamal Lowe that he was going to Preston, was all over social media. If you'd have asked me, I'd have said to you, that's what I think is going to happen.
Well, I'll answer the question in a second. But regarding being able to start the season, you're asking for this proof from the EFL. Is that something you will put out?
We will go to the EFL and say we believe we will find a buyer during September. We can trade September now. We would like permission as administrators to start the season. They'll then want to know who the buyer is. It may be a week before they give us permission.
Right.
But as soon as we get permission, we'll put it on the website, because that's a certainty. The reason we've not stood up and dealt with all this crap that's been going on is we need certainty. If I stand here and say something, as of this moment it's true. It might not be true later this afternoon, but I know it's true when I say it. I don't say things because I haven't got finality and certainty with it.
Do you think though sometimes you've actually fed into it? When you're commenting to certain people who are getting a lot of traction on Twitter and they're sort of quoting you. Do you not think?
I don't mind people quoting me.
What about your criticism of Alan Nixon? He's posted a lot of things about
Alan Nixon has never picked up the phone to me. Is he here, by the way?
Can I just say something there before anybody says anything?
Right, please. I've sent you a lot of text until you stopped answering them. So I said, well,
You've never picked up the phone to me to ask me to confirm one of your tweets, have you?
How many texts I sent you at first? Until you said no comment.
Yeah.
Twice on things that you knew the answer to.
No, I don't need to answer them. You're misunderstanding our job.
Right, can I just interject a little bit? Alan, I've spoken to Alan at length on at least 2 occasions. I've got a really good relationship with him now. After he blocked me on Twitter and I challenged him, we've had some very sensible conversations, and there is categorically, the first person I spoke to when I came in the room before was Alan Nixon. There is no agenda from him. He puts things out because that's his job. If he's got things fundamentally wrong, and I think it's harmful, I pick up the phone. He always takes the call. He always corrects it. So I don't think there's an issue there. But there are other people that journalists talk to that tell stories which may or may not be true. Sometimes we can and sometimes we can't quote on them. have conversations with you on the phone and told you things to try and allay fears on things. But sometimes it just isn't practical, or it isn't legal that we can go out and correct things, because we just haven't got that legal ability to do it.
Alan, if you picked up the phone and I say no comment, you can print it. Just pick up the phone, because some of the stuff is so off the wall and has not come from any source I could recognise. I will definitely comment on it.
Do you want to go through all the player sales?
Pardon?
Do you want to go through all the player sales again?
I don't deal with player sales. I put you on to Paul. I'm dealing with club sales. And I'm not saying this is one of your stories. A story that we were giving Lenigan, the football club, for £1. Mr. Lenigan has never bid for the football club even. So where does that story come from? There's a lot of mischief makers. I don't mean in the press. There's a lot of mischief makers around. People want to buy the club, and when they can't get what they want, they spoil it for everybody else. And I do not feel that somebody who wants to print the rubbish that was printed in that anonymous post could have come from a proper Wigan fan. They had their agenda, and I know exactly what it was.
Can I just, sorry, I think the same question here.
Can I go back
Sure.
to what Mr. Young? Did he actually go down the administration way in the right way? Because as a shareholder myself, we was never contacted, we've never been contacted, and should there been an EGM to inform us all of his decision to put us in administration?
I don't know
never
what
came.
Mr. Young has done, but he has gone into administration through the proper procedure which the court have approved when they appointed us.
And there are different ways you can go into administration. So you can go into court and do it that way, which is very, very rare these days. Or you can do it through an EGM, or the board of directors can do it, or a bank can do it if they've got a debenture. Here it was the board of directors that did it. It wasn't done by the shareholders, it was the board, and Mr. Young controlled that board.
So has our shares gone now? Do they not exist?
Your shares are still there, but they're in a company which is effectively going to be defunct. So the purchaser will set up a brand new company and buy effectively the player contracts and the EFL share.
And that company will be dissolved in due course that you've got shares.
So they're gone.
Worthless.
On the subject of Al Young, how far are you along in your investigation on the...
We've done a lot of investigations as to that end. We're also looking at the UK end, because there were UK directors. We have a duty to look at anybody who's been a director in the last 3 years, even if they've resigned. And we are shortly to lodge what is our report to the Insolvency Service, which starts off as go on the internet and fill out all the, it's a yes/no type questionnaire. They consider your answers, and if they want more information, they'll come back to us. At this stage, as I said earlier, I may not from a moral point of view agree with what's happened, but the allegations of gambling and all that, that's not what this is about, I can assure you. And the person at the EFL who made comments about that should not have publicly done it. He must have been caught off guard, maybe. I don't know.
Linking to Al Young, you mentioned earlier that he contacted yourselves on the 23rd of June. Would you
Now
not
his
have been,
lawyers, I said.
yeah, would you not have been able to inform the FL about this, or is
No.
it a confidential agreement between yourselves?
We have no instructions.
What was that conversation? What was that, if you can recall it, with the lawyers?
The lawyers phoned up and said, I don't think you even knew the club was.
No, I mean, I was thinking back to the file that I've done. I didn't know who the club was. It just said we've got a northwest-based club that might be in financial difficulty and that the money looks like it's running out. Can you speak to, this came from a barrister, can you speak to the Chinese lawyers who are based in the UK and talk through what the options might be? And that's what it was, and we were talking about live options, dead options, administration options. We went through everything over the next few days, but the bottom line was they weren't willing to put any more money in. I don't know whether they had any more money, but they certainly weren't willing to put any in.
So on that point, so you're actually saying that you alluded to this before, that there's a misreporting in the written reason.
Yeah,
it is misreported. All the witness statements that went in. I mean, bear in mind that we did it in a day on a Zoom call. there was probably 3 months' work done in a couple of weeks by the lawyers. There's a vast amount of witness statements, of documents, and you've got a panel of 3. You've got to read all that and digest it. And I think when we were both witnesses in that, we both got witness statements in, we both got interviewed by the 3 judges on it. And at the end of it, I think the way in which they phrased it is clumsy. And I took the phone call, and I know the phone call came from a barrister. I've personally never spoke to Mr. Young. I took a phone call from a barrister about a situation. I had previously been given, not advice, but I'd previously asked to look at a different club in the Northwest about 3 months earlier. And at first I thought it might be that, and I thought I might be conflicted out. So I didn't even know which club it was. The following day when we found out, and we realised, and I'd given the options, that's when I got Gerald involved, because he's got years more experience than me, and the size of the club, it wasn't just going to be a small thing.
When did you get the written reasons at the same time as us?
Yeah, I mean, I know. I'm sure if you print out everything I've ever said, I'm sure in one interview I said there was a Friday, in another interview there was a Monday. It was actually, it feels sometimes like when you're looking at something that happened the night before, the days are that long. I'm almost forgetting what day it is, because you're working weekends. It was the same day, when it was coming out at 4 o'clock, it actually came out at 5 o'clock. I found out the same day, at the same time as everybody else. So there was no, and I think in a subsequent interview I said I found that on the Monday, because in my head that was a Monday. I think
we knew the decision early, but not the reasons.
Yeah.
No, we didn't. No, it was fine.
We got a phone call.
We got the reasons a bit later than the decision.
He did. Walker Morris phoned and said we've lost, and then the reasons came out after.
Right, okay.
But what I will tell everyone,
because you were very complimentary of the process and the panel.
Well, it was.
Clearly,
No,
you're not complimentary of the written reasons.
I'm about to say that. What I'm about to say. It was a very fair hearing. There's no doubt this was not a Football League controlled hearing.
Yeah, I understand that.
And the feeling was, sitting through it for the day, is that we were in with a 50-50 chance. Having looked up the crucial piece of paper that appears as to why we lost the appeal, the fact that they've got that fact wrong has no bearing on losing the appeal. What I'm saying is, why we lost the appeal and that fact do not.
No, I understand that, but it's a bearing on why we might ask the question, because
yeah, of course,
I mean, I've not got it exactly memorised, but it does seem to mention by name that approach before he makes
I think
and it also says that they were discussing whether the best option would be administration or liquidation. So that seems very...
There were other options.
That was one of the discussions, but not on the 23rd.
Right. We did a letter, as I call, with about 4 options, CVA.
Yeah, there was. All the stuff we do, I'd take a phone call or something like that. You obviously jot it down, and then if you think it's a waste of time, you just stick it on in a tray in the office. And if you think it's important, you type it up. So there's a typed up file note from me to Gerald saying, I've just took this call. This is what I think. It looks like I might want you to get involved with it. And then over the next few days, we talked about the options. In particular, I was talking about a live option, which, but there wasn't any money there.
I think the other thing is, one of the first things we do when we get a phone call is we do a search on the company, a company's house. And when we did that, he was shown as the owner through various companies, etc. So it had already been filed at company's house. So, but it's not material to the outcome of the appeal, but it's very surprising that that mistake has happened.
But all the documents were put in court. My file notes in court, my emails to Gerald are in court, the letter that we did back to the owner, everything was printed off and was given to them. So, I don't know why they've. I suspect it's just a speed thing that they're doing the whole thing in a day, and then because it's fairly insignificant, they're saying, well, the guy. I think the context that came out was that their view was he'd already decided to put it down. Which he'd bought it in January. It was on the EFL approval, but I think the context was in terms of the EFL were saying that the UK directors could have done something about it. and what the
I
tribunal
must
said
tell
that they
you,
couldn't.
that coming out wrong delayed the final paperwork by quite a bit and getting that deal over the floor for the benefit of the club. It didn't help us one iota. Hence today's joint statement.
Okay.
I'm not a fan of Mr. Young, don't get me wrong, but if I haven't found anything he's done wrong in law as opposed to morally, then that's it. Yes, sir.
The crowdfunding that started yesterday is at almost £125,000.
126.
Yes.
You might not be able to go into much detail with this with the bidders, but how keen are they to get some supporters representation, get the supporters club involved in taking this club forward?
Well, one of the suggestions I did put forward when we had a meeting with the supporters club hierarchy, shall I call them, is if you can raise enough money, go to a business person, and I'm not naming any business people, but they're talking, and say, look, we have got X. We will pledge that to help going forward or buying it or whatever. But we want AC on the board, or we want 10% of the shares, or we want the rights to have quarterly meetings with you. The more you've got, the more strength. Unfortunately, you know, football's about money as well as all this emotion. Money talks more than emotion. May not be right, but that's how it is. So the more you raise, you want somebody who understands business, somebody who is a good negotiator, say, and use it. And that way, get your feet in the door. You're not going to own the club 100%.
No. I suppose on the back of that, how vital has the work of not only supporters of Wigan Athletic, but fans across the country been to the survival still of this football club?
And if they're given any money.
Well, those that have.
We wouldn't have finished the season without that help, the first fundraiser. Without that,
The fact we've
we
got
wouldn't have been able
100,000
to
of your
put
whole.
coaches onto
I
the
mean, it
games
was
or anything.
remarkable for a place the size of Wigan to raise that sort of money at a time when we're living under this epidemic and people aren't working. And it speaks volumes of the depth of feeling. And I've seen that. Forget the bad stuff I've had. I've got thick skin. 80% of what I've received back has been positive. I know it's a hard job, but keep at it. We might make the odd mistake, I don't know. We'll look back at the end, we'll have a review, Paul and I. Did we make a mistake anywhere or not? But we do at the time what we think is in the best interest. We're not asset strippers. We're not believe me, we're not delaying this. I would like to have a weekend off. Yes, sir.
Following on from the supporter ownership or part ownership, in terms of a worst case scenario, if you're going down the liquidation process, is there a possibility that rather than selling off the assets, rather than liquidate the club, it's purchased by the fans for £1, it drops down to whatever level, and then it's ours then? Because as a business it's worthless, but obviously to us it's still the club.
It's a
ours
quid
then.
to anybody.
Yeah.
But the trouble is you've got to find a £5 million bond to get
Yes,
fully.
It won't be the club that's... I mean, there's a confusion there in terms of words people use. Like the club is the whole sort of entity.
Right.
The club is owned by a limited company which has been going since, you'll know, a long time, 1914 or something,
Yeah.
a long time. That limited company will fall away and be liquidated and then get dissolved. But it will be a new... In any scenario, even in the scenario you're talking about, a new club would have to
Wigan
form...
2020.
Yeah, and it would form in tier, whatever it formed in 7
If you
or
wanted
whatever.
to buy the club for £1 off the liquidators, I'm sure we would do that. But you'd be 6 leagues down out the league, and it's a long way back. It has been done, but that is your backstop. You get it for £1. I don't know how you'd deal with the wages. You wouldn't need EFL permission. So maybe the supporters club, as a backstop, you can form a new company for £100, get the company formed, and at least then hope you never have to use it. Yes?
I know you've mentioned it earlier, it's not in your plans to sell the Euro Stadium, but if it does get a point where you have to sell it separately, will there be plans in that deal to include a long-term tenancy for your athletics to still play at the Euro Stadium, and if so, who will be responsible for that?
If we have to sell the stadium, not to the football, we would ensure or we will try to ensure a lease is available on agreed terms to a football club. But the trouble is, if you're not in the football league, I don't think you could afford to play here. So you'd have to share somewhere, pay somewhere else.
What has been the main stumbling blocks for you in terms of finding a buyer? Because I imagine you was quite optimistic when you first came into the club. Obviously, there's a lot of interested parties. What has been the main factors of why you're still here, basically?
Why are we still here?
In terms of how we're still selling the club?
Well, we haven't finished our job.
I know that, but in terms
I'm waiting for a buyer to do something.
what has
I
been the
can't
main
force
issue
them.
you've had in terms of the main issue buyers have had?
The issues are values. Because as I say, if we don't get enough to pay the Football League, we've got that money, but we've still got £3 million worth of losses in the administration to pay, £1.3 million to the unsecured creditors. If we don't pay that 1.3, if I sell it and walk away now and say, well, I'm not paying the 1.3, because really, and the buyer don't pay it, you've got 15 points next season deduction as a minimum. I don't want to do that.
That's perfectly reasonable. In terms of your personal point of view, in terms of the administrators and the fees that you'll be paid, will that be available in a open report once the job's been completed?
The fee that the football club pay us will be in the football club report, going to all creditors. The fee in any other company will be in that report, going to all creditors. So in due course, whenever that is, it could be 9 months, a year before we get paid. We came in, if we don't succeed in this, there's always a chance we won't get paid.
No trouble.
But it's all on the public record at the end of it.
Thank you.
Yes.
We actually, through this process, have we actually taken money in on money that was owed to us in terms of player sales
Yes.
and things? Yeah. Is there any other money owed, any rents or anything on the ground? Or
There was about 50 grand of rent from the rugby club. There's a disputed balance of maybe another 20 or so. It's not going to make or break anything.
Not significant sums.
And then we've had bits in on loan players we've had out, and and the old player that's been out, is it a number of goals or a number of... Brighton, when they stayed up, there was, I think it was £250,000 on a player that had been sold. So there's all these clauses that go into contracts that say if a player plays so many games and a club gets promoted or stays up, then it triggers. But then equally, we've had a lot of loan players at Wigan that we haven't paid for. There was somebody from Chelsea that we owed 200 odd grand for. I don't think he even played that often. All those sorts of things, they all sit there at the EFL. So you basically, if you don't pay them, the clubs tell the EFL. Same on the transfers. So every time you do a transfer, the money goes to the EFL. So if you sell players to the Premier League, the money goes to the Premier League, then it goes to the EFL. The EFL look to see who else is owed money, and the EFL divvy it out before they send us anything. And that's been some of these. Luckily, some of these fees weren't actually on the computer at the time the money went in. So when Joe Gerald money went in, we made it by a day. The following day, there was money due on Robinson, Williams, Kiefer Moore, which was probably best part of £3 million. And if we'd have been a day late on that Gerald money, that 900 grand would have just evaporated and we wouldn't be sat here. The difficulty with a lot of this stuff is that we've got it all in our heads, so it's because it's what we do for a living. I'm happy to explain it, Joe's happy to explain it, but I can't, if I spend my life explaining every single decision, I can do, and I can do it because I know it, but I haven't got the time in the day because I'm already spending all my day here and all my weekends on it. Well, not all my weekends, but you know what I mean. It takes up a big chunk of our lives. And at the end of it, it keeps you informed, and on important things where you need to know, we do it. But on some things, you just have to trust me that the reason the Geldart deal was done, I know it got through quickly. There was a stumbling block on it at the last minute, and and it's a major problem because if that money doesn't land, I can't pay the wages and the club ends. So you have to work to put the problem right, which we did, and we got all the signatures we needed, and it happened. But don't think that we're just selling players and selling a training ground just because we feel like selling them. There's a proper reason there. And ultimately it comes down to if we can't pay the wages as we go, we can't pay the expenses, there's no club.
Every decision on a sale has been discussed, not in 5 minutes, between the three of us. It's not just, oh, we've had this offer, we'll take it.
And we don't always agree on it. We have training ground bust-ups between the three of us. It's all part of it, and we respect each other's views on it. We argue our cases, and we try and work out what the best can happen is and what the worst can happen is, and you make at the end of it. We make the decisions collectively, and I'm pretty comfortable that we. I think with hindsight, I don't think there's anything we'd have done differently, because at each point you make a decision. The worst case is you can't pay the wages the club folds, or you can't pay the EFL and the club folds. And the best case is it buys you another 2 weeks. Well, as we sit here, as I said before, we sit here now. Today, we'll paid all the wages and all the deferrals bang up to date. What we have got, of course, is that every time we sell a player, there's VAT on it. Every time we pay wages, there's PAYE. Those numbers are big because we haven't paid them over, but we will have to pay them over. So when we say we've paid all the football creditors, it's only because when those player sales have come in, the EFL have taken the money. That doesn't mean to say that the VAT on those players has yet been paid, but it will have to be.
You said you just alluded to before, Mr. Crowdfunding, that you said that you thought we would be able to show the EFL that we have got the funding to get through September as well. Is that correct?
I think
Definitely.
I think we've got money for September because the wage bill drops tremendously in September. August was high because all the players who are out of contract get another month's salary automatically at championship rates. I mean, it's wonderful.
It doesn't work in any other industry. I mean, it's something I've not come across before, but something I think the PFA negotiated with all the leagues, which it's called severance. So if you get some other 12-month contracts, it's actually a 13-month contract, and it's at the rate that they've been on. So although the players that are still here, their wages drop, the players who are leaving got an extra month, and that it's not cheap, believe me.
There's a question there, please.
Yeah, so if the club isn't shutting down by the 31st of August, and what was the purpose of the deadline?
Because it was true at the time.
So is there a new deadline for when the club?
Not to a date. What you have to understand is, I said more than once that this job changes not by the day, but by the hour. So when we said at that last press conference, the 31st, it wasn't to scare people, it was to put a sense of realism out there that time is running out. And time is still running out, but we've got a bit more, we've put some more sand in the egg cup, as they say. I haven't got a date specifically because the date will be judged by how the remaining bidders perform. One bidder said if his bid is successful, he would hope to complete by the 14th of September. I don't know whether that's feasible. It is, if everybody gets on. We're ready to go. We're ready to do whatever's needed. But the buyers of a football club always sense and always feel they're the only buyer in town. And that gives them a certain power. Yeah.
Through administration, a lot of people are in limbo in terms of out-contract players, staff members. How have you been communicating with them throughout? Have you been always obviously keeping them updated with everything that's going on?
We can't continually update you. I think that's the top and bottom of it. You must let us have time to get on with what we're doing and not think every day, well, we've got 10 questions today, what we're going to do. We haven't got time for that. With respect to you, it's far more important we get on with what we're doing. But I said I'm quite willing, if one of you, just one, I don't want half a dozen, if one of you is selected at the end of today, sends me a text of who you are and what your details are and a nominated person, I will give them an hour of my time a week on a phone call, because I'm not coming down here, unfortunately, because that wastes 5 hours of round travel. I'll give you an hour a week on the phone to ask whatever you want. And today, to be fair, we haven't asked for any questions in advance. We've taken whatever you've asked and we've tried to deal with it.
But there's more linking on it in terms of the staff members that are currently at the club. Are they kept in the loop with
If we've got something to tell them, we'll tell them. We'll put it on. But we've nothing to tell them at the moment. Absolutely nothing.
And out of contract players, by definition, are out of contract. That means they're not contracted to the club anymore. That means they're on a bottom and they're on a free. They don't work here anymore.
No problem. In terms of when you're looking at bids to obviously buy the club, are you looking at the pure finances, or are you looking at whether the
I'm
individual?
looking at one thing. Does it pay the necessary £4 million, wait just a bit more, that we've got to find to get this club going forward? That's it.
That's really
I
grand.
don't care who it is, who's done it. Well, I do care who it is, but you understand. If somebody's going to sign a contract, give us 4 million and can pass the EFL, then what I said about Wigan playing football next season will apply, and I would hope that everybody gets round the new owner and gives them a fair chance. I'm sure you'll give them a fair chance. But I remember at Leeds when all the supporters had about 28 managers and 200 players with the suggestions. You have to accept he's not going to go on a spending binge again. You're going to have to face a couple of years of consolidation at best. And if you get that, good luck to you. And if you get promoted back to Championship, I'll come down and see your first match.
Right, on that note, we've got to get the message out to the rest of the world. So we've got some members of the media that want to do some interviews for lunchtime bulletins. So if I could just...
Are you happy you've had enough time?
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
No.
Thanks very much.
Can you get the message out to support the supporters club in this?
Yeah.
Because that's a last resort bid.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Thank you very much.